恭迎法王，请合掌。
This is the recitation of the Heart Sutra.
大家可以跟法王挥挥手，感谢法王的应允，慈悲受法。大家挥挥手，向法王祝贺一下。扎西德勒，扎西德勒，扎西德勒，法王好，法王好，法王好。扎西德勒，扎西德勒。
阿弥耶，阿弥经，乃至我老师耶，我老师经，不苦集灭道无知耶，我得一无所得故菩提萨埵，一般若波罗蜜多故，心无挂碍，无挂碍故，无有恐怖愿地颠倒梦想，究竟涅槃三世诸佛，一般若波罗蜜多故，得阿耨多罗三藐三菩提，不知般若波罗蜜多，是大神咒，是大明咒，是无上咒，是无等等咒，能除一切苦，真实不虚。故说般若波罗蜜多咒，即说咒曰：揭谛揭谛，波罗揭谛，波罗僧揭谛，菩提萨婆。
Next is the Mandala offering, the ceremonial offering of Mandala by the organizers of the teaching. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine it as Buddha filled and offer it up to you. May all sentient beings enjoy a perfect and pure realm.
天女现曼达，一现再现三现里程。
다 나와래.
请坐。
天女请出班。
Next is the teaching on the Heart Sutra.
대행해라다. 아주 싫은 이부터 살래.
So we have already recited the Heart Sutra.
되게 다다 무시다 가지들이 당연하다 찬조는 주제리즈.
So before the teaching, before giving the teaching, I want you to recite in Chinese this one verse which says, "May the three poisons be eliminated, dispelled. May the wisdom be ablaze, and may all obstacles be averted, and may we enter into the Bodhisattva path."
唱回向文哦。
Okay.
다들이 장소다 Taiwan.
So today, you, my Dharma friends in Taiwan,
그거 충분히
so I have this opportunity to give this teaching to you, and you also have taken great interest, and me too.
다가다지 년객
So because there are the disciples, students wishing to receive the teaching, I too, as a bhikshu, a monk of the Buddha's tradition, has the responsibility to give the teaching as you requested. And so, teaching this Heart Sutra, I feel very happy. So, amongst the many different religious traditions of the world, Buddhism is one of them. The difference is that the Buddha himself, just as monks and scholars, just as gold is tested by cutting, rubbing, and burning, likewise, burning, cutting, and rubbing, likewise, you should examine my teaching and then accept it. and not because you have devotion to me. So just as gold is tested by burning, rubbing and cutting, you should, the Buddha said, you should check my teaching so that as a result, when you see that the teaching of the Buddha is based on reason, when you find the conviction, then you should practice my teaching. So this is something incredible that the Buddha has stated. Of course, all religious traditions of the world teach love and are beneficial to human beings, but except for the Buddha, perhaps, there is none of the other founding teachers have said that their followers should check their teachings, but that they should follow the teaching on the basis of faith. But the Buddha has advised to examine his teaching, and through examination, when the followers found the teaching to be reasonable, then they should, and if beneficial, they should then follow the teaching. So first, the Buddha taught in India the Four Noble Truths. So during that teaching, he said, this is the noble truth of suffering, this is the noble truth of the origin, this is the noble truth of cessation, and then the path. And so he first went over the nature or the identity of the Four Noble Truths, and then taught the Four Noble Truths based on their functionality, and then having understood the Four Noble Truths, what should we do is, he said, we should understand what suffering is. So all of us, including even the insects, do not want suffering, but want happiness. So if you don't want suffering, what should we do? We should actually find the reason why we are suffering. The cause of the suffering should be checked. For example, when we become sick, we would go to the hospital or clinic to diagnose our sickness for a diagnosis. And so regarding the causes, there is the karma or actions of our body and mind, body and we create causes or we do actions with our body, and these in turn are propelled by our mental afflictions like attachment and anger or hatred. And therefore, the Buddha said the origin of the suffering should be abandoned or overcome. So the origin of suffering are the karma and these mental afflictions. And then at the third recitation of the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha taught how to attain the result of practicing the Four Noble Truths. And so he said, the suffering should be abandoned, but there's nothing to be abandoned. Origin should be, and the suffering should be known, but there's nothing to be known. Origin should be known. Origin should be abandoned, but there's nothing to be abandoned, and so forth. And so what this means is that suffering, origin, cessation, and the path do not have any independent, intrinsic existence. And then the Buddha has also
군중 녀모베 군중 녀모베 군중 싸워야 다 차당 로티기다 연구여베 인도산에 다 어디 아니 독립과도 송도가 다딘 제셰 세보다 14호디 아니 배고 바보 루주
So, regarding the teaching of emptiness, the Master Nagarjuna has explained it very thoroughly. So, in Chinese, you call him Longsu Pusa. So, he had many disciples, but Master Chantakirti, so as it is mentioned in a sutra, Master Chantakirti has demonstrated the truth of the Master Nagarjuna's teaching precisely and thoroughly through reason and logic, very subtle reason and logic. And in Rinpoche, Master Tsongkhapa's praise to the Buddha for teaching the dependent arising, he says that so the one night it's the prayer in praise of the Buddha for teaching dependent origination. It says the night lily grove of Nagarjuna's treatise, Nagarjuna, for whom you prophesied, would unravel your unexalted vehicle as it is, shining extremes of existence and non-existence, illuminated by the garland of white lights of Chandra's well-uttered insights. Chandra, whose stainless wisdom orb is full, who guides freely across scripture space, and so forth. So verses 49, 50. And Master Nagarjuna, Master Chantakirti has written his Madhyamaka Avatara, entry into the middle way, and its auto-commentary. And I have studied these texts, and also Abhisamaya Alankara, the ornament of clear realization, and particularly the text on middle way, in the middle way, the 6 treatises called The Collection of Reasoning by Master Nagarjuna. And in the fundamental verses of the wisdom verses of the middle way, it says that what is dependently arisen is said to be empty, and that is said to be designation, and that is the middle way. And Master Aryadeva, in his commentary, in his text, the 400 verses, he says that just as the physical faculty permeates all other faculties, sensory faculties, likewise, ignorance permeates all other mental afflictions. Therefore, by overcoming this ignorance, one would overcome all other mental afflictions, and that in turn is done through the understanding of dependent origination. And so, all our distorted views and so forth are rooted in this ignorance. And therefore, if we understand dependent origination well, we will be able to overcome both the extremes of nihilism and eternalism. And so, Master Nagarjuna's verse that I quoted earlier, what arises through dependence, and these just as physical faculty permeates all of the faculty, and so forth. And so, with regard to this teaching of emptiness, first you listen to the teaching, and having heard the teaching well, you should contemplate the meaning over and over again, think over and over again, and then develop the conviction in it. And so, since the Dharma is about transforming our mind, just hearing the teaching will not do that. But because we are so habituated with all these mental afflictions over many, many lifetimes, and therefore it's very difficult to gain insight into this teaching, this profound teaching easily, just like that. And so we should give a lot of thought to these teachings over and over again. And as I mentioned earlier, I memorized the Abhisamaya Lamkara and Madhyamaka Avatara and others in my childhood. But just by having them in one's heart, having memorized them does not transform you, but nor this transformation happens just by hearing the teachings, but you should reflect on the teaching over and over again. And then, for example, with regard to Bodhichitta, as Abhisamaya Alamkara says, Bodhichitta is that mind which focuses on attaining enlightenment for Buddhahood, for the benefit of all sentient beings. And Master Shanti Deva, it says, unless you exchange yourself, your happiness with the suffering of others, there's no way, leave alone reaching Buddhahood, even in this samsara, you will not have happiness. And then, in this verse of Master, verse for the Bodhichitta, we come across these lines through this. I shall engage to fulfill the interests of oneself and others. I shall generate a mind for awakening. And so, as the Kadamba masters have said, this Bodhichitta helps us to purify our negativities as well as create and accumulate merit and wisdom. And so, Bodhichitta is one practice that we should focus on. And then the other one is emptiness, the teaching on emptiness, the middle way. So I read Master Chandakirti's text, Bodhisattvacharya Madhyamaka Avatara, which is our middle way text. So Master Chandakirti says, this suchness just explained is most profound and terrifying, yet people with past habituation will certainly realize it. Others, however, despite having vast learning, will fail to comprehend. So thus, seeing those other traditions as constructed by authors' own minds as akin to the treatise that set forth propositions on self, forsake admiration for treatises and systems contrary to this one. And so here he is actually calling, referring to masters like Vasubandhu, Dignaga, and so forth, that they have not understood that this profound teaching of Master Nagarjuna's tradition. And Master Chandakirti, in his auto-commentary, says, did they actually abandon this tradition or the system? And he says, yes, indeed, they have. And so this verse at the end of the Madhyamaka Avatara, verses chapter 11, verses 54. And so, with regard to the profound emptiness, what we should do is analyze the nature of things. And then in the chapter 6 of Madhyamaka Avatara, there are those 4 absurd consequences that Master Chandrakirti brings forth to counter the assertion that things have some kind of intrinsic or inherent existence. And so, regarding those 4 absurd consequences, so it says that there are 4 absurd consequences that befall those who assert the things and beings exist inherently, which are that the noble being's mind, which is totally absorbed in emptiness, would be destroyer of entities and things. And so if things were to have any intrinsic independent existence, then that's the logical absurdity that would fall on one. And then that conventional truth would withstand the analysis of a reasoning mind, a probing in nature, the final nature of things. And then that the absolute production of things cannot be denied. And the 4th one is, the Buddha has mentioned, regarding that, the Buddha has mentioned that things have no essential identity in and of themselves. And he mentions that emptiness does not make things empty, like the form or physical things empty. So masters like Savatantrika Madhyamakas do assert that things have some objective existence, saying that they exist by way of the existence from the object side as well as our designation and perception with an unmistaken mind. And so this kind of philosophical assertion do not get at the final reality of nature precisely. And so having been contemplating emptiness for many years, as Master Chandrakirti says, at the end of towards the end of chapter 6, thus illuminated by the rays of wisdom, verse 224, thus illuminated by the rays of wisdom's light, the Bodhisattva sees as clearly as a gooseberry on his open palm, and so forth. Though his mind may be, 224, chapter 6. And so, having given thought to these teachings for many years, I feel that I may be able to reach that kind of level of understanding and insight into experience of emptiness. So having given thought to these teachings of emptiness on a daily basis, so I don't think I have to give oral translation of this Heart Sutra, but so regarding the Heart Sutra, there is the title given in Sanskrit, or it says in the language of India, Bhagavati Prajnaparamita Sridaya, and in Tibetan, which means the heart, the perfection of wisdom, the Bhagavati, the mother. And in Madhyamaka Avatara, Master Chandrakirti pays homage to he begins by saying Shravakas and the middle-level Buddhas arise from sovereign sages. Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas, the compassionate mind and non-dual cognition, as well as awakening mind. These are the causes of bodhisattvas. And with regard to the teaching of emptiness, Master, the Buddha has taught the 100,000 verses of the middle way, the perfection of the middle way, and then the 25,000 verses, and then 8,000 verses. So, and then we have other perfection of wisdom sutras as well. And there is a reading transmission of the 8,000 verses with the explanation. And then the shortest, one of the shortest is the 25 verses of Prajnaparamita, which is the Heart Sutra. So it says, the Blessed One was staying in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak along with a great community of monks and the great community of bodhisattvas. And so, in that place, the Buddha was absorbed in meditative concentration. And what kind of meditative concentration? It mentions the appearance of the profound. So the profound refers to emptiness, and appearance refers to the dependent designation. So emptiness does not mean nothingness. So because the objects do not exist in and of themselves, do not have their own essential existence, therefore they exist by way of dependence, and so that is the concentration, the appearance of the profound. At that time as well, the noble Avatmakeshwara Bodhisattva, the great being, clearly beheld the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom itself, and even saw the 5 aggregates as empty of intrinsic existence. So here the word even has a significance. In Chinese, you do not have this word in the Chinese translation. So, of course, you can research on this. And when I inquired whether this word is there in the Sanskrit, I heard there is. It's there. So what this means, there are 2 different meanings to this. One is the 5 aggregates are empty of any intrinsic existence. And so these are the basis based on which a person or being is designated. So, of course, those who do assert a gross or a coarse level of understanding of selflessness do assert selflessness. For example, Chittamatras do assert the selflessness of phenomena as well, but they still do assert a consciousness as having existence from their own side. And so, even the person which is designated on the basis of these aggregates do not have any independent or true existence is the unique position of the Madhyamakas. And so just as the aggregates do not exist from their own side or have no inherent existence, a person too does not have any inherent existence. So, on the other hand, it also, this even can also mean that just as a person does not have any intrinsic existence, objective existence, the aggregates, 5 aggregates also do not exist. inherently. So this is because there are those who assert a consciousness, an aspect of consciousness to have a true existence. So just as a person does not have any essential existence in and of itself, likewise, the five aggregates, even the five aggregates, are empty of intrinsic existence. And so if this word even is not there in Chinese translation, it would be good to insert it. So not only a person, but even the aggregates on the basis of which a person is designated do not have any inherent essential existence. So this has a great significance. Thereupon, through the Buddha's inspiration, the Venerable Shariputra spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the great being, and said, "How should any noble son or daughter who wishes to engage in the practice of profound wisdom train?" When this had been said, the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, the great being, spoke to the Venerable Shariputra and said, "Shariputra, any noble son or noble daughter who so wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should clearly see this way." They should see perfectly that even the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, and form too is not other than emptiness. So this is the fourfold emptiness. So this is very significant. So there are the sevenfold reasoning to establish emptiness and the fivefold reasoning, and then the diamond splinter reasoning, and so forth. And so then there is the tetralemma, which analyzes the result, and the previous one is diamond splinter is analyzing the cause, and so forth. So there are these different reasonings that are used to establish emptiness. So with regard to emptiness, for example, when we talk about emptiness of a form or physicality of thing, the physical object is the basis or the subject on which emptiness is established. So we cannot talk about emptiness apart from that physical object itself. We cannot talk about the physical emptiness of the physical object, just like that. So how do these physical objects appear to us? It appears as if it has some objective existence from its own side. So therefore, since that's not the way the object is, it says the form is empty. So does it mean nothing? No. Therefore it says emptiness is form. So a form or physical objects exist by way of a mere designation, as a merely designated object. So when you talk about emptiness of a form, because there is a form, we can talk about emptiness of the form. And if there's nothing there, you cannot talk about its emptiness as such. So the object in relation to which we get the perception that it has some objective existence. In relation to that very object, we establish emptiness of it. So emptiness does not mean emptiness is form, means that there's emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. But because things are designated, they exist by way of mere designation, and therefore there is something that we can point at as being the form, and which is designated. Apart from being designated, there's no form as such, and therefore it is devoid of any intrinsic, inherent, or independent existence. And so, emptiness is not other than form, and form too is not other than emptiness. So, as I have quoted verses from the 6th chapter of Madhyamaka Avatara, those 4 absurd consequences that would befall anyone who asserts any objective existence in things. And so, that conventional truth would withstand analysis of a reasoning mind or probing its nature. So things do exist, but when we try to search for its identity, we will not be able to pinpoint anything as being this or that. But because it affects us, it either is helpful or harmful things, because they are like that, we cannot deny their existence as such. But they do not exist in and of themselves, independently or from their own side, objectively. And therefore, things do exist by way of dependence on other factors and by way of designation. So if form is not empty, it cannot have any changes. So because it changes, that shows that it does not have any intrinsic, essential existence in and of itself. And so this emptiness of form and emptiness are of the same nature. Therefore the text says, emptiness is not other than form, and form too is not other than emptiness. So in terms of their nature or identity, the essence, they have the same essence, but conceptually they are different. So the appearance and emptiness are of the same essence. And so the quantum physicist's explanation of the nature of things is quite close to this understanding. They say how things exist. Of course, they do appear. They do appear to have some objective existence. So when we look at things, these different physical things, matter and so forth, they do appear objectively existing, but the quantum physicists say that they don't exist that way. And so, so they say that things, as long as there is an observer or observing mind, there is an observed object. And so that means they're saying that things exist when we, through the conceptual mind, which designates it. And so they say, of course, when you try to search for their identity, the matter and subparticles and subatomic particles and so forth, and there's nothing that you can actually find and pinpoint as being this and that. So this is quite similar to say what the Chittamatras, the mind-only school, say. So likewise, feeling, perception, and so forth, there's no need to explain these. And then next, there is the Buddhas. And it says all the Buddhas who abide in the 3 times attain the full awakening of unexalted perfect enlightenment by relying on this profound perfection of wisdom. So, for example, the Shakyamuni Buddha, the founding teacher of our tradition, right after his enlightenment, he said that he has found this nectar-like Dharma, which is profound, peaceful, free from conceptual elaborations, luminous and unconditioned. This nectar-like truth or Dharma I have discovered. Even if I were to, it was taught to others, no one will understand it, so I should remain silent in the forest. So of course we can, while saying that things have no intrinsic existence in and of themselves, we can still accept the existence of our head, our speech, and so forth. But when you are asked, where are you? Where is that I? Of course, nothing, whatever, can be pinpointed as being me. And so, I use this verse from the fundamental wisdom verses of the Middle Way by Nagarjuna, in the first verse of the 22nd chapter, which says that the Tathagata is neither his aggregates nor distinct from them. The Tathagata is not in the aggregates nor the aggregates in the Tathagata. The Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. What else is the Tathagata? So I use this to refer to myself. I'm neither the aggregates nor the aggregate. One with aggregates, nor different from them, and so forth. So I do not possess the aggregates. What else am I? So of course we have this strong idea, that the notion that we exist here, something solid, as something solid. But when you analyze through these kind of methods, of course you will not be able to find anything as being you, me. But that does not mean that I do not exist at all. Because I exist, you can talk about my speech, my mind, and so forth. But when you do this kind of probe into how this I exists, it does not exist the way it appears to us, as if it has some objective existence. So nothing whatever can be found or can be pinpointed as being the I. And so Master Chandrakirti goes on to say, thus when such phenomena are analyzed, verse number 35, chapter 6, nothing is found as their nature apart from suchness. So the conventional truth of the everyday world should not be subjected to thorough analysis. And therefore, when you do analysis, when you analyze things and try to search for their true identity, nothing whatever can be found that we can pinpoint as being this or that. And then, therefore, those things exist. They do not exist the way they appear to us, as that is objectively. Then what you actually conclude is they do exist by way of designation. And so the everyday experience that we have is things have some kind of objective existence. But when you do analyze and try to search and to find that identity of the object, nothing whatever is found. And so you find things, you come to the point of saying, oh, things are baseless. So we have these mental afflictions, the disturbing conceptions, which are rooted in this innate sense of an independently existing I. And therefore, to reject that, we should do analysis into the nature of an I. And as I said earlier, you will be able to come to a point saying, oh, this I have so far thought that this I do exist independently, but that is not the way. As I said earlier, I also am aspiring to reach that state of the cessation. And then, with regard to the mantra of the Heart Sutra, Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha. So one translation of this mantra says that go, go, go beyond, go perfectly beyond, establish yourself in this enlightenment. So through understanding the teaching of that of emptiness and giving thought to it over and over again, having gained conviction in the emptiness, when you give more and more thoughts to it, these the intensity of the negative emotions, these mental afflictions will be reduced, and as time goes on, you'll be able to overcome them. And so you'll be able to tread along this path, which is referred by these words, go perfectly, go beyond, and go perfectly beyond. And so having treaded all these four, you finally come to the end point of that path, which is the referred by Bodhiswaha, establish yourself in the enlightenment. So when you think about emptiness, you will be able to see how you can transform your mind. As you have the prayer in Chinese, how to overcome these the three poisonous afflictions. How can you overcome them? Is by developing this wisdom, light of the wisdom of emptiness. And so, with the help of this wisdom realizing emptiness, helped by the accumulation of huge merit, which is to say, being helped by Bodhichitta, complemented by Bodhichitta, as a practitioner of Bodhisattva path, you'll be able to reach that highest goal of enlightenment by overcoming all mental afflictions as well as the residual imprints and stains. So from my own experience, I can tell that transformations within ourselves can happen. Though I memorized Abhisamaya Alamkara, Madhyamaka Avatara, and so forth, but they're just by that I have not been able to make transformation. But by listening to the teachings of my masters, like Master Ning Rinpoche, Gyabje Ling Rinpoche, and Gyabje Rinpoche, so I have received teachings on these texts. Lamrim and so forth, I received mostly from Tijang Rinpoche, Lojong, and then regarding the classic texts of the Indian classical texts, Madhyamaka and so forth, I received teachings mostly from Gyabje Ling Rinpoche. And after coming into exile, one day I related my experience of my practice, and he very gladly told me that, oh, before long you will be a space yogi. So though I may not be there yet, but I am about to get there. So why I'm telling this to you is because through this listening to the teaching and studying them and also familiarizing yourself with these teachings of emptiness and so forth, you will be able to I wish to tell you that you'll be able to develop the experience of emptiness and so forth within yourself over time. So with regards to the explanation of the Heart Sutra, the best texts are Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Avatara, Mula Madhyamaka Karika, and Master Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara. And then with regards to understanding the different aspects of mind, mental factors and so forth, you will be able to learn about them in these texts called Loric, Mind and Awareness. And so you go through a detailed explanation of the different types of mind and so forth. So in the English, you have the term, there is the term emotion. So they do talk about emotions, but there's no detailed explanation of what comprise these emotions. But in our text, we have these 6 primary afflictions and 20 secondary afflictions and so forth, which are emotions. So I am telling you that my Chinese brothers and sisters, that it is important to pursue the study of Buddhism, because study, reflection, and meditation should not be divorced from these 3, should not be divorced from one another. So with this, I conclude the teaching, and now we'll have the question and answer session. So whatever questions you have that has come to your mind.
Question.
谢谢。顶礼尊贵的第14法王达赖喇嘛尊者。三宝弟子 Vincent 呢，很高兴的再次聆听到法王的教诲。
Is there a difference in meaning? So first of all, Tashi Delek, greetings to you.
那弟子呢，今天想请问
Thank you, Your Holiness.
请问空性和自性空
Is there a difference in meaning between emptiness and emptiness of inherent existence?
是，法王好，不好意思，我再重播一次好了。谢谢法王。
谢谢。
法王好，很高兴再一次聆听到法王的教诲。那三宝弟子呢 ，Vincent 想请教一个简单的问题。那从今天的这个心经的讲授呢，我想知道空性和自性空的差异在什么？就是这个简单的问题。在这边请祝法王身体健康，正宫康泰。
谢谢。
扎西德勒，谢谢。
这是的。这东北意思的。
So emptiness means, even during the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, when the Buddha gave this teaching on the Four Noble Truths, as I said earlier, he taught emptiness right in the beginning of his sermon, in the first sermon. So this word, emptiness, was used since the first sermon by the Buddha.
不是我的问题，问让法王感冒。
동번이 단다데 아니 도드베 송구요리
So Trantikas, Vabhashikas, and Chittamatras, when you go further, more profound teachings, then Madhyamakas teach emptiness. Within the Madhyamaka, there are two sub-schools, those of the Svatantrika Madhyamakas and the Prasangika Madhyamakas. Svatantrika Madhyamakas assert objective existence in things. And so the Prasangikas say that things have no objective existence whatsoever, but they are merely designated. And so emptiness and inherent lack of inherent existence mean the same thing. Emptiness and inherent existence mean the same thing.
什么问题？
Next.
谢谢法王啊！我想这边来讲话，还是请法王这个身体要注意健康。我们现在换第二者，谢谢。
Thank you, Your Holiness.
尊者吉祥，弟子是王云秀，真的很高兴在这个很殊胜的因缘当中，可以大众一起和您共同聆听您的教言。 愿您长久住世，健康吉祥，法轮常转。最重要是要赶快来台湾。
How does emptiness mean dependent arising and vice versa?
请问您就是如何以空性来证成缘起，以及以缘起来证成空性？请尊者。
So
this is very significant, very important. So emptiness, when we talk about emptiness, and if you understand emptiness to mean nothing, because things cannot be found through when you search for the identity, then that is more or less nihilism. Though things do appear to have some solid, independent existence in and of themselves, yet they do not exist that way, but by way of designation, independence on many different factors and conditions. So when you have a true understanding of emptiness, then what you will understand is that emptiness, when you think about emptiness, it means that things are devoid of any independent existence, that they are merely designated. So things do exist by way of designation. So when you understand emptiness and have this kind of feeling that it does not mean nothingness, but things are devoid of any existence, way of existence from their own side, independent from other factors. And in one text, it is even mentioned So, John the Lama Rinpoche says, by dependence, when we talk about dependent origination, by dependence, reality as it is not forsaken or rejected. By arising or origination, it concords with the convention of the world too. This conventional of the world too is retained. So dependent arising is like the king of reasoning. It is the authoritative, reliable word of the Buddha. So the third question is, what are the criteria for a modern Dharma practitioner? So the practitioners who lived during the time of the Buddha and today's practitioners do not have much difference. When we talk about doing Dharma practice, it has to do with your mind. So it doesn't have anything to do with the external appearance. Of course, the monks and nuns have their own vows and they have the different robes. But with regard to meditation on emptiness and so forth, the external appearance will not make any change. Today's practitioners may wear suits, jackets. So, for example, I have scientist friends, they are professors and so forth, but they still do, in their mind, they do think about emptiness and bodhicitta and so forth. And they do not have any kind of different demeanor in their face and so forth, saying that they are practicing bodhicitta and the view of emptiness. Whatever you are doing in your day-to-day life, you should go about with that. You should carry on with that, but with regards to the mind, this meditation on emptiness and so forth, you should do it as part of your emotional hygiene, as we do take care of physical hygiene as well, and so that your negative emotions of attachment, anger, hatred, lust and so forth decrease. So the greater the conviction you gain of emptiness and so forth, the lesser should these So at the end of the chapter 6 of Chandakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara, it says, though his mind may rest continuously. So beginning with the verse number 224 through to the end of 225 is all is recited. This is chapter 6. And so modern professors of universities can do Dharma practice. So, of course, modern education more or less focuses on physical, the material development. But when it comes to practitioner of Dharma, there's no difference between the modern practitioners and the past practitioners. Whatever profession you have, whether you are involved in business or teaching or education and so forth, you should still continue with your practice of the Dharma, being more kind, generous, loving and so forth towards others. How do we integrate the view of emptiness and bodhicitta in our practice? So the purpose of meditation on emptiness, if you do meditate on emptiness merely with the intention to reach liberation without the help of bodhicitta, but with the sense of renunciation alone, then that would lead you to do the practice pertaining to the Shravakas and so forth. Whereas if you do develop or meditate on emptiness with the help of bodhicitta, in order to overcome not just the mental afflictions, kleshas, but even the stains, the residual stains left by them, which is to say the obscuration to knowledge. Then you are doing the practice of meditation on emptiness for reaching Buddhahood. So as a result of your practice of both the bodhicitta and emptiness, the view of emptiness, both the wisdom and the method, then you will be able to reach, attain both the physical dimension of a Buddhahood as well as Dharmakaya. And so the two bodies. It is mentioned that faith is important for a Dharma practitioner. So what are the methods for developing an unshakable, firm faith? So firm and unshakable. So with regard to this faith, as the Buddha has said, you should use reason and analyze the teaching of itself. So when you develop faith based on reason through your investigation, that would be a firm faith. Otherwise, because if you say you believe in this and that because this Lama or that Lama says this is so, this is that, then that will not be so firm. Because when you see something else, some other explanation in a text which is different from what the Lama has said, then your faith will change, waver. And so, as a Buddhist, and particularly practitioners of the Nalanda tradition, should follow reason more than just faith. And therefore, even if you are listening to some Lama, you should still examine his teaching and check the Lama himself as well, whether he or she is being true to his words or not. And through reason, when you find a true faith, and it would be a firm faith, otherwise just following some Lama, and when the Lama becomes a disgrace to himself and others, then that would be a problematic one for you as well. So use reason. In the contemporary competitive society, there are many people who are obsessed with greed and those who commit suicide out of depression and so forth. How can we stop these? So with regard to this, here the teaching of dependent origination is helpful, because when you see that things exist by way of through many different factors coming together to give rise to them, and you will not be able to, you will not see things independently. So because people have different mental dispositions, interests, proclivity, and also different professions, different education, and so forth, you should not be narrow-minded and become too narrow-minded, and then become very irritated, you become easily irritated. So this should not happen. So we have this marvelous intelligence. So though you may face some problems, make sure that you don't get disturbed easily, because you can still do analysis of how things happen, why things have happened, and so forth. And so when we do our prayers, we say, may all sentient beings, my mother sentient beings, have happiness, and so forth. And so you should have this intention to bring happiness and benefits to all sentient beings. In Master Shantideva's Bodhisattva Charyavatara, he mentions how extreme self-cherishing attitude causes ruin to oneself, ruins oneself and others. He says, all happiness and joy in the world comes from wishing others to have happiness. All suffering comes from wishing oneself to be happy alone. What need is there to say more? Look at the difference between the Buddhas and us ordinary beings who are obsessed with selfishness, and the Buddhas who are moved by wishing others, wanting others to be happy. And so when you think altruistically, bringing help and happiness and so forth to others, your mind will be very open. So otherwise, bodhisattvas would be committing suicide. That's not the case. So they think about others more than oneself, themselves alone. And so the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas are especially compassionate and loving towards those who are destitute and in a very pathetic and poor situations.
法王好，我是龙清心随弟子汪之莹，很高兴有这个机会跟法王请益。
How should a beginner Buddhist student practice the teaching in today's hectic life?
祝法王健康快乐。
공사 철로 년세 시규로 맞아 남주 롬네 레당워 저 지인 베이나 아주 니마를 리신나라 초알나라 최 컨디션 냠설는 것도
더 추스럽네 지금 도보도야 서로.
So when you talk about doing Dharma practice, just reciting some prayers, doing rituals, these are secondary practice. But the main practice is the practice of developing bodhicitta and the view of emptiness. So these are the main practice of Dharma. So when you do your recitation of mantras and prayers and rituals and so forth, with the help of the bodhicitta intention, then that would be real Dharma. Without that, it may not be Dharma, because you can still do Dharma, some rituals and prayers, mantras and so forth, in order to harm others. So that's not Dharma practice as such. And so, when you talk about Dharma, your own mind stream should be directed towards the Dharma practice. So when you think about others, when you think about things arising through many different conditions coming together, you will not be easily disturbed and irritated and disturbed. Even if someone disturbs you or something disturbs you, you'll be able to say, oh, this disturbance to me has come because of such and such many factors. And that there's not one single factor that you can point your fingers at. And so it would be helpful to think about how things are dependently arising and arisen.
我是台湾职棒吉祥果梦的学佛弟子。那我们在学习佛法的过程里面，就知道说，你要成就佛道。
Do we really have to go through the triple process of study, reflection, and meditation to pursue Buddhism? Or can people without such opportunities still practice Buddhism?
觉得有些困难的话，还有没有其他的方法可以帮助我们一样渐次增上，能够成就佛道？谢谢。
公司出了年是许久了，我做南区的老种阶段，引进民间，确实公司人百姓的两是两个三，原来得到这样的女把没白呢，的南区两是两个他些先白有呢。
对，特殊公司这样的，国家是。
So study, reflection, and meditation, there are many different degrees. If you can study the classic, the great treatises, the greater your learning through that, you will be able to think more profoundly and extensively, and through that, it helps you to have many different techniques to depend on, to go over when you wish to do meditation. But if you wish to do a very little study, for example, studying about what the Buddha means, what the Dharma means, and then the Sangha, and so the Dharma is someone, the Buddha is someone who is a teacher, who is fully enlightened and so forth. Dharma means the principle that leads you to enlightenment. And then Sangha are those who integrate these teachings within themselves. And so even in this kind of a brief manner, you can still do study of the Dharma. And so with this understanding of what the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha mean, you can say, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so with regards to study and reflection and so forth, there are various ways in which you can do that. And Jo J. Atisha, so when Master Adisha was requested to give a brief, short teaching, not an extensive one, then he gave the lamp for the path to enlightenment. And then, with regard to the sutras, the discourses of the Buddhas, we have the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the most extensive one, the 100,000 verses, then the middle length, 25,000, and then the short one, 8,000 verses. But all of this, the content of all of this can be subsumed within one verse as well. Which is to say, this one verse which says, so having studied for the Dharma briefly first, and then you can go from there to do more extensive study, intense and extensive study. That's one way of doing it. So with regard to the study of Madhyamaka philosophy, of course, you can study some brief text, short text, and then go to the more extensive explanations like Tsongkhapa's the explanation or commentary on the Madhyamaka Avatara and his commentary on Mula Madhyamaka Karika, and then also the Laktong, and then the essence of true eloquence and so forth.
弟子琼云祈请你，祈请你法轮常转，法体安康，长命百岁，长久住世。我们所有的人在台湾等着你莅临。我在这里想请教。
So is it better to rely on one teacher from one religious tradition alone, or to rely on many different teachers from different traditions?
多种不同教派多位善知识比较好。谢谢您。
我那个公司出来台湾了。So I pray
that Your Holiness would be able to visit Taiwan soon. So it depends on your interests, your predispositions, and the reality of your own situation. For some people, they find it better to rely on many different teachers. For example, because each teacher has his or her own unique qualities. So I have about a few 20-something teachers from whom I have received teachings, and so they have their own unique explanations, unique transmissions, and so forth. And so the lamas themselves have their. So though you may have many teachers, and then you may find these lamas are not not friendly with each other, but that's not your business, whether they are friendly with each other or not. However, the scriptures are our real teacher, because there are people who are supposed to be teachers but do not have much learning of scriptures, but only consider people as my teacher just to gain, to collect students. So such a Lama, without much knowledge of the Dharma, may even influence negatively their students. So if you have many teachers, you can receive different teachings, explanations, and if you have no problem with the different explanations and interpretations that they give, that's good. Otherwise, like the past masters, such as Jetsun Milarepa, who relied on mainly Jetsun Marpa Chogyalotu, so you can go about like that as well. So of course, even from one Lama, you can receive teachings from the different traditions as well. So I have received teachings from masters of the Sakya, Kagyu, Geluk, Nyingma. So I have received all the different teachings. So some of these teachings I have received from some teachers, and some from different lamas. So if you find the teachings to be effective and beneficial to you for your mental transformation, spiritual transformation, then having many teachers and receiving many different teachings and would be helpful as well. Many people advise me it's better to follow non-sectarianism. So how should I practice non-sectarianism?
感恩尊者。
그는 공사철 년세 쉬기로天上 미망부 디스기도 다 출루 리메 자나 약시당 상실에 있는데 세기도 그래서 출루 리메 지자고이나 리메 천이바데 그네 자고이나
데려봐 그다음에 그런 거는 좀더 차잖아.
So that's true.
좀더
For example, we have the different philosophical schools, Sautantrikas, Chittamatras, Madhyamakas, so within which there are different sub-schools. So we are studying all these different philosophical traditions. So doing that, we do draw lots of beneficial knowledge. So having received different teachings from different lamas, so of course it depends on you. So if these teachings cause you to more disturbance through attachment, anger and so forth, then that's not good. Or more confusion. So there were cases in the past that some lamas have received many different teachings from many different teachers and have found them to be very beneficial.
在我的过去这些年当中见过你好几次，在国外，在印度。刚刚看到你在荧幕上现出的时候呢，我还是挺激动的。在这里呢，有个问题想请教一下，请法王开示。
How can I stop being easily upset and short-tempered in my daily life?
要修安忍，但是呢，佛法修持的时候，在团体的队伍当中呢，难免会经常会很多人会生气、愤怒。碰到这种情形的时候，在安忍上要怎么下功夫？请法王尊者开示，谢谢。
근데 공사철 거기 참아직 시셔가지. 근데 코너스 세대 당 와서 남치 장디가 서버검 세대 서베랍자데 양양도 송고도.
So in Buddhism, there's teaching, a lot of teachings on patience. So how should one practice patience or tolerance when one becomes angry? So you should see the faults or disadvantages of anger and hatred and the advantage of patience and tolerance. And anger is rooted in our self-cherishing attitude. So studying, have the Master Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharya Avatar, a guide to the Bodhisattva way of life with you, and study it as much as you can. Especially the chapter 6 shows the disadvantages of and the pitfalls or the shortcomings of anger and hatred. And then chapter 8 shows the benefits of cherishing others over oneself and the disadvantages of cherishing oneself alone, in great detail. And so, of course, this text is in your language, and so keep this book on your bedside, and read the chapter 6 and chapter 8 and reflect on them. So if you do that, it would really be beneficial. Our sole refuge of the Tibetan people, His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama. has given us this your nectar of teaching on the Heart of the Perfection Wisdom Sutra. We would like to thank you, Your Holiness. May all the pandemics and diseases and so forth go away from the world, and may the world have everything good. So we are an organization formed from 5 different centers. We pray the Buddha Dharma would flourish and remain in the world for long. And whatever they had declined there has been to the Dharma, may they be recovered. The Supreme Leader of the Tibetan people, Your Holiness, and all the different leaders of the different Tibetan Buddhist traditions of Buddhism, may all of you live long and have that your aspirations may be fulfilled. May all the obstacles to your life be avoided, overcome, and may we finally retain enlightenment. And may we also pray to Your Holiness to make your aspiration for all sentient beings to become enlightened. Stop. So I was thinking of doing the Bodhichitta ceremony at the end, as I usually do this. So there's no, it's the text that we use for this is not any complicated one. So we'll say these lines, which begins by with I seek refuge in the 3 jewels, I confess all misdeeds individually, and so forth. So imagine the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, himself in person, and also the 8 Bodhisattva close disciples in the form of deities, and the 16 Arahants, and masters Nagarjuna, Sangha, and their followers, and so forth, the Indian 17 Nalanda masters, and also all the lineage masters, and yourself, surrounded by sentient beings of the 6 realms of existence. So I seek refuge in the 3 jewels, confess all misdeeds individually, rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I hold in my mind the Buddha's enlightenment. To the Buddha Dharma and the highest assembly I seek refuge until enlightenment is reached. To fulfill the interests of oneself and others, I shall generate the mind of awakening. So even if you wish to fulfill your own goal, selfish goal, there's no greater factor than bodhicitta. Even if you want to accomplish the help and benefit of others, happiness of others, there's no greater factor than bodhicitta. As the Kadamba masters in the past Kadamba masters have said, that this alone helps in accumulation of merit and purification of negativities. So the best method of means to purify negativities and accumulate merit, spiritual positive energies, is bodhicitta. So to be happy in this life, as well as to have happiness and well-being in the future lifetimes as well. It is the bodhicitta that brings this. And so the bodhisattvas make such prayers, but as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the miseries of the transmigratory world. And so when you have such a courage, determination, that the other difficulties and problems may not cause much disturbance. You will be able to be indifferent to them. And so, this text says, having generated the mind of highest awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. And so all sentient beings across the expanse of space are invited as your guests for the feast of enlightenment. I shall engage in the delightful supreme practices of enlightenment. And may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of sentient beings. So this text will use for Bodhichitta ceremony. As I already described, Buddha Shakyamuni, the Shakyamuni who lived 2,500 plus years ago, as it is said, if you have a faith and within yourself, the Buddhas will be right in front of you. And then Bodhisattvas in the form of deities, the 8 close disciples of the Buddha, such as Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, and so forth. And then the Bodhisattvas in the human form, such as Masters Nagarjuna and Asanga, and so forth. So just as all these bodhisattvas and Buddhas have generated bodhicitta and engaged in the bodhisattva practices, likewise, you should determine in your mind that I will do so. So first, let us all meditate on bodhicitta and the view of emptiness a little while, for a little bit.
And 주주는 써야지. 지들은 문제 대시지 주주선이 끼워서 주주선을 나와라. 대단히 신다 봤다. 다 양조라 편도도 주주선이 주주선으로 무엇이 돌아버 계잖아요.
So just as it is mentioned in Bodhisattva Avatara,
기라도마 다 최세gen들이 최세gen 그 라마디 니리신도 전주선 건데 공부해 봐. 그다음에 동립다 좋아지는 전주선 건데 공부해 봐. 능신지기 소스 공부인 삼바지기 그다음 노람교.
So it says just like space and all the great
담제샤체 도시쇼.
So make this determination that you will develop bodhicitta, just as it is been practiced by the teacher, and also that I will engage in the practices of bodhisattvas as well. So if you do meditate on bodhicitta,
So at
the end of the 3rd chapter of Bodhisattva Avatara, it is mentioned that this is the bodhicitta is like the stream elixir that overcomes a lot of death. It is the inexhaustible treasure that eliminates all poverty in the world. It is the supreme medicine that cures the world's disease. It is the evergreen that shelters all beings wandering tired on the roads of life, and so forth. And then it says at the end, today, in the presence of the old protectors, I invite Transmigrators as my guests to Sugatahood, and in the meantime, to temporal happiness. Gods, demigods, and others rejoice. So just as I do the practice of Bodhichitta and the wisdom of emptiness, you should think that just as my Lama, that is, you're referring to me, does these practices of Bodhichitta and the wisdom of emptiness, likewise I shall do these practices until I reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and that I will, as it is said at the end of this text, today, in the presence of all protectors, I've already invited the Times Makers as my guest to the Sugadahut. In the meantime, temporal happiness, hence gods, demigods, and others rejoice. So this, to have this kind of determination to work for the benefit of others and to make your transformation within yourself will not happen just overnight, not happen within one session of teaching, and you should keep doing your practice continuously.
Lord Jimara Konsal Haninand Jawan Tamsin Chimba Shoku Chapka Sikin Korlo Teva to Journey Chukin Kolavan to Kora and the Saxi to Sowan de Palo I've gotten much more to say in Chimba.
So I pray Your Holiness would be able to come to Taiwan next year for giving teaching to us. Thank you, Your Holiness.
Oh yeah.
This is the dedication from the prayer of Samandabhadra.
法轮常转，法体安康。
Just as the brave Manjushri and Samandabhadra too realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these roots of virtue with the dedication of praise, praised as the best by the victorious ones has thus gone after 3 times, so that I might perform the noble bodhisattva deeds.
Thank you. 谢谢。
谢谢法王。挥手，谢谢法王，下次再相逢。谢谢法王的分享，谢谢法王的传授，谢谢。
谢谢。
So bye bye.
好，今天上午的法会圆满，下午。